Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today we're doing a little fact checking, okay? Now, recently a viewer sent me a little inquiry. They told me, Muta, do you know that the internet has a censorship bill that's passing November 15th? That's today. That's right now, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, when I hear the words internet censorship, it freaks me out. I really think that the internet shouldn't be censored, and I think that no matter what, the freedom to say whatever you want, the freedom to read whatever you want, the freedom to consume whatever you want, as long as it's not blatantly illegal, like anything involving children, obviously, should be a right, okay? It's something that I think we pride ourselves and we actually take for granted on this side of the world. Do you know there's entire countries like China, for instance, where trying to access the truth about what happened at Tiananmen Square? Oh boy, this video just got brought down. Or looking at your favorite Winnie the Pooh meme is actually not allowed in their country. Not only is the Great Firewall of China the biggest censorship tool in the world, but any kind of tool like that brought to our side of the world is something that I am vehemently against, okay? Even if you don't like reading something bad on the internet, even if something disturbs you, but it's not illegal, I think it has a right to exist on the internet, and that's just where my hardline beliefs are, okay? If you disagree with me, we can't agree to disagree. So when I heard the words internet censorship bill, I was like, oh God, I remember the days of SOPA, PIPA, COSA. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't remember what COSA is, the Electronic Frontier Foundation basically told us in August 11th of this year that the Kids Online Safety Act was a bill that allows for a wide range of government penalties for online speech. If that happens, the access we have to information may be forever changed. COSA will make state prosecutors and federal bureaucrats the final arbiter of content moderation in the United States. And that's when the US government wanted to ban depressing content, okay? Basically, content that politicians believe will cause minors anxiety, depression, or encourage substance abuse. Now, obviously, anytime the government brings kiddos into the mix and says, we're bringing this law in to make the kids safer, it's 99.9% of the time used to shuffle in laws that are designed to hurt society in the long term. But again, this actually isn't even about that, because the article that I was sent was this one, the Biden's Internet Takeover Plan. Now, this is the first time I've ever seen a Truth Social link share. That's interesting. But this one got my attention. Whoa, Internet Takeover? Now, this one is written by a guy known as Tim Wildman, who says, the Biden administration has asked the FCC to take complete control of the internet, the way internet service providers do business in America. Currently, it's a private sector. The FCC would take control and establish rules and regulations to strangle the free market. Now, I'm going to be somebody that tells you this right now. The internet is kind of a goddamn requirement these days, okay? It's not so much a privilege anymore. You know, generally when a lot of people want to do work, when people want to apply for jobs or communicate with people around the world, the internet has become a tool that I think the public should have general or low-cost access to, okay? If my tax money goes to making the internet as a whole better, that's a lot better than sending my money to blow up people on the other side of the world, okay? Getting into wars that I don't care about. All right, good. The Lockheed Martin snipers aren't here yet. Okay, ooh, can't criticize that military-industrial complex, can we? This would include dictating broadband prices to consumers, towers, and satellite locations, and expansion of services by your local internet provider. It would tightly regulate providers to the point that they would basically become an extension of the government itself. Now, of course, I always like getting to the facts of a situation, okay? I always like to fact check it. Now, the story gets a little wilder when I looked up from the office of Commissioner Brendan Carr, who is currently, as of right now, in charge of the FCC. They're the commissioner. So wait a minute, this organization's getting a power grab, but they're against it? Okay, the plot thickens. Let's read this. Democrats have been in charge of the FCC and administrative agencies for approaching 12 out of the last 16 years. They have had the opportunity over that stretch of time to put in place nearly all federal telecom policy of their choosing. In fact, the federal government has allocated hundreds of billions of dollars for the purpose of ending the digital divide, while Democrats have run the administrative state. I agree with President Biden on this point. The administration's broadband policies are failing. The costs of building internet infrastructure in this country have skyrocketed thanks to the Biden administration's inflationary policies. The administration has no plan for filling a now empty Spectrum pipeline, one that is vital to America's economy and geopolitical leadership. Meanwhile, the FCC is just sitting on Spectrum that would connect millions of Americans to new 5G services. The administration has needlessly blocked and delayed new infrastructure builds. Fiber and cell sites components are laying fallow in warehouses and laydown yards across the country during the government's failure to remove regulatory red tape. And the Biden administration is preparing to waste additional dollars through its multi-billion-dollar Internet for All initiative by pursuing extraneous goals at the expense of connecting Americans. So where they said the Biden administration, they're going hard left, they're blaming the private sector and free market capitalism for the administration's own policy shortfalls. Now, I'm not against the fact that obviously governments mismanage the fuck out of everything, but I'm also not a total fan of the free market running laissez-faire. The way that internet works in the United States, or at least even in Canada, and in many parts of the world, if you're not in Europe or something, is that internet can be very tight-fisted in the rural areas that you live in. Obviously, I live in Toronto, okay? I live in a major metropolitan area. I live in the Greater Toronto area. And I have tons, not really, I have two choices for internet, okay? I either get fucked by Rogers or I get fucked by Bell, okay? Thing is, I'm getting fisted one way or the other. Generally, when it comes to pricing myself in this situation, I'm a lot like the Americans, okay? We really don't have a lot of choice for internet service providers, the people that we purchase our internet access from. Generally, if you live in an urban area, you probably have access to fiber optic connections, some of the best stuff in the industry, and your rates probably are better than somebody who's living maybe an hour out of town, an hour and a half, in a rural area. Their option for internet might only be expensive satellite internet, where they're paying more money than you and me, but they're getting less of a service. To regulate the actual development of infrastructure across the country, across the world, is honestly a net good thing. It allows people who don't have a lot of money to be able to afford access to the internet in a manner that you and I enjoy, okay? The more people get on the internet, the better. So again, what happened is Biden gave the FCC marching orders. The president called on the FCC to implement a one-page infrastructure investment, which basically gives a breathtaking scope, all in the name of digital equity. All right, so this is an interesting term. It actually went to the fact sheet provided by the FCC to cover what they were discussing when it came to digital discrimination of access. So where they defined digital discrimination, which I found interesting, right here they said, in furtherance of our goal to facilitate equal access across, to broadband internet access services, we adopt the following definition of digital determination of access. So policies which affect differently impacted consumers' access to broadband internet, which I think is like defined like 25 megabytes a second or above. And basically it would provide them access based on their income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin, or are intended to have such differential impact. Under the rules we adopt today, we will investigate conduct alleged to be motivated by discriminatory intent. So when I look at this, some of the actual users that were reading this, for instance, this article that came from the America Family Association, which is the first time I've ever heard about them, they ended up saying that because of all of this stuff and extra regulations, so some of them actually came from this text, where basically they said the FCC would gain extra rules, like extra regulations. For instance, they could regulate the following for every internet service provider, such as their network infrastructure deployment, network reliability, upgrades, maintenance, consumer premise equipment, and installation. So yeah, a lot of companies, for instance, internet provider companies, depending on where you live, will absolutely shaft you in things like services or maintenance. Imagine when you have to get your internet fixed and you call up your internet service provider and you live out in the middle of the boonies and they're like, yeah, we're going to send out an agent, maybe Christmas 2030. That work for you? No? Well, what option do you have? If the government can regulate a baseline for accurate, proper service and maintenance, yeah, that's actually a good thing, and the government should be doing that. Network infrastructure deployment is so important. Basically, if you look at a broadband map of America right now, ladies and gentlemen, right now, okay? And again, this is provided right by the FCC. You can see that in blue, there's 100% coverage of fixed internet. There are parts of the country where people only have mobile internet access. For instance, right here, when it comes to Idaho, there are patches of Idaho that literally have no goddamn internet. But again, this is the wilderness area. So that means if you live in the wilderness in your own little cabin, good luck getting internet. If you live in this patch, you get maybe 0.29% mobile coverage, which just means satellite. There are still parts of the country that do not have proper internet services. And that's actually not a good thing. And even in parts of the world where they have 100% coverage, the amount of companies, sometimes as low as one provider, exists, meaning there's no competition. They could screw you anytime you want. This, if we're talking about deploying and creating an infrastructure and getting companies all on the same board and forcing them to spend some of the billions of dollars they make a year, ain't a bad idea. Then, of course, they say things like speeds, capacities, latency, data caps, throttling, prices, promotional rates, imposition of late fees, opportunity for equipment rental, installation time, contract renewal terms, service termination terms, and use of customer credit and account history. Yeah, I would really hope the government regulates some of the shadier practices. For instance, even in Canada, when you apply for certain internet services, fiber services, they will just do hard credit checks all over you. And when it comes to pricing, there are parts of the country, like I said at the beginning, that people pay more for shit internet, and the companies don't care. If you're paying for it and they're the only game in town, what fucking reason do they have to upgrade and provide you a decent baseline service? They don't. You have no option. You have no competition. Spread your cheeks, baby, because you're taking it all the way up there. No lube. Then, of course, mandatory arbitration clauses, pricing, deposits, discounts, customer service, language options, credit checks, marketing or advertising, contract renewal, upgrades, account termination, transfers, service suspension, and other covered entities. So where I guess the only aspect of censorship maybe comes into is the FCC regulating things like service suspensions, right? But even then, all of these regulations seem like the government is just bringing shit up to a basic baseline. Look, the internet is an important tool, and making sure that in the world's richest country right now, that at least every user has some baseline services is ultimately a net good. And again, I get that people are scared that they're paying for other people's internet services, maybe out of their own pocket, specifically for individuals that are in a low-cost area. But again, I'd rather the money we pay in taxes go towards our own people versus going to the military-industrial complex and shuffle to the other side of the world, okay? Look, at the end of the day, these regulations aren't bad, okay? Regulations are not horrible. Again, I don't trust the government with anything, period. But having a baseline for a lot of these important services is kind of a needed thing. So again, I looked further into that entire thing, and where I went to the only part where people could construe maybe censorship, where they talked about digital discrimination. For instance, under the rules, we will investigate conduct alleged to be motivated by discriminatory intent, as well as conduct alleged to have discriminatory effect based on income level, race, ethnicity, consistent with the definition of equal access in the statute. So let's look at equal access and what they actually mean. So here they mention in it, not later than 2 years after November 15, 2021, the Commission shall adopt final rules to facilitate equal access to broadband internet. The most baseline shit. They're not even talking about gigabit internet, fiber, whatever. They're just talking about basic 25 megs a second. Basically, they'll take into account the issues of technical and economic feasibility presented by the objective. So again, preventing digital discrimination of access based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin. I don't know why they necessarily mention things like race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin. I feel like language, I don't know what race and ethnicity has to do with digital discrimination. Maybe when it comes to purchasing an internet service on the point of sale, maybe that's what they're getting at. Income level seems the most important, right? Obviously, for people that can't afford decent internet, they shouldn't be completely priced out of such a, I guess you could say, necessity at this point in life. That kind of comes at me, which I guess people may look at as slightly inflammatory, is when they hear the word task force to prevent digital discrimination. And again, the task force is charged with coordinating the development of rules and policies to combat digital discrimination and promote equal access to broadband, overseeing the development of model state and local policies, and improving how the commission seeks feedback from persons facing digital discrimination in their communities. And of course, they even reference one of their research papers for this, or one of their surveys. Now, when you go to their actual website, the FCC, they say regardless of where everyone is, they need to access high-speed broadband services. And this is usually defined as 25 megabytes a second. So again, it's not massive speed, but yeah, they keep mentioning income, race, ethnicity, or religion of the communities they will serve. I guess they're trying to basically bypass any possible barrier, even though it's really hard for me to see race, ethnicity, maybe if you're looking at it systemically, but they want to promote equal access for everybody, no matter what, to access the internet, which again is a requirement for at least getting like some jobs or participating in today's modern digital society. Now, going back to the actual complaint written by the actual FCC chairman, there was two things that hit me like a truck. One of them was the price controls. Last month at the 11th hour, the FCC slightly softened its proposal to use Title II proceeding to regulate broadband rates. Now we know why. The Section 6506 order that the FCC will vote on next week explicitly states that the FCC can use it to regulate the price and even the profitability of an ISP. The FCC arrogates to itself the power to review and determines the lawfulness of promotional pricing and discounts. It even puts the use of credit checks squarely in the crosshair. Again, I really do have no soft spot for the profitability, or rather the insane amounts of money some of these ISPs earn. If it means pricing internet properly versus the insane rates some of these ISPs do because they know they have no competition, I'm totally okay with that. And then, of course, they even question the idea of the fact that there's more regulation somehow, where they say up here that landlords are covered, construction crews are covered, marketing agencies are covered, banks are covered, the government is covered, all newly regulated by the FCC and liable for any act or omission that an agency determines has an impermissible impact on a consumer's access to broadband. Congress never authorized the FCC to regulate these industries or entities. So to all the businesses and individuals that'll be subject to the regulation for the first time ever, welcome. I hope you have good lawyers. Dog, I'm pretty sure banks, marketing agencies, and construction firms have some pretty goddamn good lawyers, the government included. And again, to me, to be honest with you, I think it's totally fair to have some baseline regulations to build the internet infrastructure. You can't have major cities like New York, Los Angeles, Miami to be internet-like havens, I guess, and then leave people who are basically living out in the sticks to stay in their point in time. If they need to catch up to 2023 standards of digital interactions, that's totally okay. And like this article says, a successful administration takeover will result in poorer service, higher prices, and less privacy. Now, this is where I get into like the misinformation clearance. So I didn't read anything about censorship or any technical tool to spy on users. So I have no idea where this is getting into less privacy. I guess their implication is because the government is directly involved now in more things with internet service providers, maybe they can sneak something in there that opens up more data that you create that gets sent off to the government? Maybe, but that's a severe extrapolation. And again, poorer service and higher prices, it really sounds like the government is trying, at least, to regulate some level of pricing. So even the most low cost of people in the world, in the country, can afford some level of basic internet access. We're not talking enough to stream 8K video games and movies, just basic access, which I think is kind of a necessity at this point in society, okay? We do need the internet for a lot of things that isn't just porn and YouTube. Now, at this moment in time, I think a lot of these bills get kind of scary to me because it feels like they come from a place of political arguing. And I don't really get into the politics of things. You know, if you ask me about Biden, for instance, personally speaking, the US age of retirement is 65. Don't know why we keep letting these senior citizens like Biden, Trump, whatever, get into power. Maybe somebody of a reasonable age should be leading the world's most powerful country. But the censorship stuff was really important. Look, I live in Canada, okay? Why would I care about a US law? Because anything that happens in the United States affects services that everyone around the world uses, okay? Most of the tech services in the world come from the United States. So I'm always worried when it comes to digital censorship. Now, I've done my due diligence reading this bill, and I cannot find anything for the life of me that says anything about censorship. So there's really nothing to worry about other than a few of these ISPs, some of the CEOs may have to end up losing some of the millions they make in higher costs on running their business. And if that means better service for all of us unanimously and a little less money for some of the richest scumbags in the telecom space, trust me, you will not find a violin small enough, okay? It's not gonna happen. And this is where, like, when I got this letter, I was like, man, why is it that this one article is talking about this, but, you know, organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation that have talked against internet censorship since the beginning of time aren't discussing it? That's because this is all bullshit. This is rich telecom companies being forced to actually not play unfair, develop the infrastructure, and not price gouge the fuck out of the most poor in society, okay? And I think that's ultimately a net good. And yeah, if it means these telecom companies piss and shit themselves a little, sure. But nowhere in this bill did it ever come across that the internet was going to be censored. And before I end, that whole concept is a little tough to grasp. Remember, internet access, if you look at it technically, is just routers talking to routers. Big routers at the ISP level talking to others. The one country in the world cannot globally control the internet of large. So no matter what, censorship on the internet will always be censorship on the internet will always be this battle that governments try to pull off, but no one will ever truly achieve. At least that's the hopium I keep snorting. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, kind of a little technical video, but this is a topic that's very important to me. I do love to talk about internet censorship, and if this was true, I would tell you, but for now, it seems like severe misinformation floating around on Facebook. Yeah, one time I agree with the government, okay? God bless. This is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.